you designate your, under quotation marks, I'm not characterizing here, enemy, or what you are fighting against, as sometimes you call it postmodern neo-Marxism. I know what you mean. Do you think they are really, where did you find this data? I don't know them. I would ask you here, give me some names or whatever. Where are the Marxists here? I don't know any. Who is a Marxist here? Show me any big names of political correctness. I think they fear like a good vampire fears garlic. This is why they are already the one who is not a Marxist, but at least approaches economic topic, Bernie Sanders. He is already under attack as white male and all that stuff and so on. What you describe as postmodern neo-Marxism, where is really the Marxist element in it?
Hi there, and this is the first video of this year, and I'm hoping that you had an awesome new year. So I was thinking of ending the last year with this video, but I could not. So I thought, why not start the new year with this video? And that is because this debate is one of the most important debates in this century, and it is dubbed the debate of the century, or the rumble in the realm of the mind, and so on. And that is probably because Zizek and Peterson are both profound and independent thinkers who are able to stand their ground against all the things that are happening. So let's get into this. Slavoj Zizek, and I don't know how this is pronounced, Slavoj Zizek, is a Slovenian philosopher. So he is a Hegelian and also a Marxist, and he also follows the Lacanian psychoanalytical worldview. So basically, he looks at the world from a Marxist and a Hegelian perspective, which is also combined with the psychoanalytical view of the world. And of course, he calls himself
a pessimist.
So to put his entire philosophy in a very simple terms, he says that ideologies are false ideas that bring people together under a false pretense. And it also helps people to make sense of the world in a much better way. But it has an important problem where every ideology has a concept of the other or the outside world, which basically means the world that does not coincide with our viewpoint. So the group with one ideology is generally antagonistic towards the other, and they tend to blame the other for all the issues that they face. And Zizek says that most of these ideologies are in no way based in rationality or reason, but in the way that it appeals to our unconscious. So we are unconsciously or we are irrationally attached to specific ideologies because it appeals to us, not because it's rationally logical. So that is also called as the false consciousness in Marxian psychoanalytical view. We'll get to that in a bit. Jordan Peterson is a famous figure that the Guardian itself announces with this title: the most dangerous man in the world. Not necessarily, but maybe. And in their own words, he bills himself as a classical British liberal whose focus is psychology. This article is very snobbish, I cannot read it. We all understand what Jordan Peterson stands for. He calls himself a liberal with a lot of conservative ideas, who stands against the hegemony of the woke left and gets punished by them in many occasions. Now, Jordan Peterson, henceforth to be called as JP, and Zizek both agree upon the danger of identity politics and how ideologies can cause degradation to the democratic principles that we all believe in, the democratic liberal principles. For Zizek, as a Hegelian, Marxist, and a psychoanalytical person, his focus is to constantly challenge these ideologies without necessarily doing anything practically, because Hegel was not a big supporter of practical actions because it's not possible. And by challenging these ideologies, they could strengthen the democratic processes. And for Jordan Peterson, the way forward is to cultivate self-growth and self-development and get your house right before you turn to society, or that we can focus on ourselves, our development and our own emancipation through the pursuit of truth, which would then be reflected in the society where you live in. That is a view that Zizek disagrees with, obviously. Now that we have looked at Zizek and Jordan Peterson, let's get back to the debate itself. And I think there are 3 or 4 different places where Zizek absolutely stuns Jordan Peterson and challenges him profoundly. But 2 of them, or at least 1 of them, are spiritual or psychological in nature. We are just looking at the political part. One, when Zizek says the conservative traditionalist leaders like Donald Trump are actually postmodern rather than conservative. And 2 is the topic of our video, where are the Marxists? Neoconservatism involves 2 different ideas. First idea is obviously liberalization and privatization, or the promotion of free market, which is crucial for economic growth and human progress. And the second idea is the promotion of traditionalism or conservative religious norms in the society. That is, they say that modernism, which began from the time of the Enlightenment period, wanted to keep the religion and the religious norms and beliefs away from the society. And this devolution of religion from the social order has had catastrophic results. So they think that religious beliefs and norms are necessary for the evolution and the stability of any society, so they need to bring back these traditional values into the modern societies, and they need to grow forward but without losing its value systems. And the second important aspect of conservatism is that they don't like multiculturalism or accepting other cultures, because they think that it tears away the fabric of the society. They are also against political correctness, because that would lead to totalitarianism and suspension of free speech, so on and so forth. He says that the neoconservatives or the conservatives are actually postmodern rather than traditional, in the sense that it's actually a reaction or a criticism of the modern thought and the modern system. I feel that's true. What do you think? Because as a conservative, that is pretty much what I'm also saying. We need development. We need social growth. We need free market and not socialist growth. But this kind of economic growth should not degrade the cultural and social fabric of the society. For that, we need to hold on to our traditional values. So that's pretty much what conservatism is. Now, the reason why that is quite challenging is because as conservatives, we all tend to think that we are anything but postmodern. We are, if anything, pre-modern. But we are not, because we want modernity. We want the progress and the industrial advancements related to modernity and science. We just don't want the devolution of culture and society. So we are modernist. So we are postmodern. Maybe the right kind of postmodern. Second and most important political challenge that Zizek posed at Jordan Peterson is this question. And I think it's not just to Peterson, it's to the entire world. I mean, it involves both conservatives and liberals and left liberals and everyone. Because can we actually identify the Marxists in the postmodern, woke, constructivist ideologues? To answer that question, we obviously need to know what neo-Marxism or Marxism actually stands for. Because in 1917, the USSR was formed as the socialist heaven or the socialist utopia. But then soon we see that it is going quite terribly. And the Marxists, or the new era, or the new generation of Marxists have come up who criticize socialism and communism. And that is how Neo-Marxism is formed, in the wake of the failure, the obvious failure of socialism and communism in the Second World. The Frankfurt School of Thought is established, adopted Marxism psychoanalysis, and it gave great importance to empirical evidences and empirical scientific understanding of the social and political issues. So they would only take verifiable, measurable scales for analysis, and they emphasized on psychoanalysis and obviously the early Marxist thought. And they focused on the concept of false consciousness, which means that people can assume a false collective consciousness, which hampers them from actually seeing how oppressed they are. Because of the prevailing narrative of the people in power, or the powerful, or the bourgeois, the suppressed people do not understand how suppressed they really are, and they also extol the same kind of social system. So that is called false consciousness according to the neo-Marxists, and that gives rise to the critical theory. Now, the aim of critical theory at that time was to liberate human beings from the circumstances that enslaved them. So their main focus was to transform contemporary capitalism into a consensual form of social life. For Hochemeier, a capitalist society could be transformed only by making it more democratic, to make it such that all conditions of social life are controllable by human beings, depend on real consensus in a rational society. The normative orientation of critical theory is therefore towards the transformation of capitalism into real democracy, in which such control could be exercised. So neo-Marxists does not associate themselves with socialism but with capitalism, but by making it more democratic and more socially egalitarian. Critical theory in itself is a huge thing, so we shouldn't go into that in this video. Maybe we can dedicate another video on that. Please let me know in the comment section. Now that this is relatively clear, we go back to the question. So where are the Marxists in postmodern neo-Marxism? Well, JP's answer to Zizek is also very important here. Most people just say that, okay, Jordan Peterson is defeated by Zizek by this question, but no, he gives a brilliant answer.
I think what happened, especially in France in the 1960s, is as the radical Marxist postmodern types like Derrida and Foucault realized that they were losing the moral battle, especially after the information came out of the Soviet Union in the manner that it came out. That the whole bloody Stalinist, the whole Stalinist catastrophe, along with the entire Maoist catastrophe, but they didn't really have a leg to stand on. And instead of revising their notion that human history, and this is a Marxist notion, should be regarded as the eternal class struggle between the economically deprived and the oppressors, they just recast it and said, well, it's not based on economics, it's based on identity, but it's still fundamentally oppressor against oppressed. And to me, that meant that they smuggled the fundamental narrative of Marxism and many of its goals back into the argument without ever admitting that they did so.
The main point here is that neo-Marxists, or the later Marxists, and the earlier theories of Marx that focused on social change or political analysis, they all focused on ideologies and how the society is structured and so on. So the neo-Marxists, or Marxists today, focus on ideology, which means that any ideology, it could be socialist, it could be religious, it could be Islamic, or it could be atheistic, any kind of ideologies that promote a false consciousness. Psychoanalysis once again. That is the problem that neo-Marxists focus on. So the proponents of postmodern critical theory that is born out of the critical theory? Are they really focused on changing ideologies? Or are they focused on creating change? Or are they focused on genuinely upholding democracy in capitalism? I think you know the answer to that question. So, in conclusion, both Zizek and JP are right, because it's very difficult to see real Marxists in the postmodern neo-Marxism or the postmodern critical theory. But then, as JP says, we often go back to the Marxist idea of the class binary or the binary, the class struggle between two groups. But they did not rely on empiricism by any means, and they don't want the emancipation of individuals through capitalistic or democratic capitalism, nor do they have a refusal to succumb to a false consciousness.
Do you see in them, in political correctness and so on, any genuine will to change society? I don't see. I think it's a hyper-moralization, which is a silent admission of a defeat. That's my problem.
The best example for that would obviously be vaccination, COVID vaccinations, or wearing the mask, because a very not morally neutral thing, wearing a mask, it's for your hygiene and your safety, became a moral act. And this moralization turns into dogma, and then that becomes the truth. The same false consciousness that takes away people's freedoms. And a thing that I really noticed in Zizek's argument is his question, do they want any genuine social change? On the surface of it, we could see that they are aiming for social change and cultural change, if anything. But the postmodern critical theory would soon confront the tragedy of socialism and communism in the 20th century, failure and total destruction of the societies that they rule. This video has been a massive endeavor, if you ask me. Zizek versus Peterson debate was truly a treasure, and I have watched it through and through more than 3 times now. And I'm really glad I could make this video on it. And subscribe to this channel for more content like this. Have an awesome time and have an awesome 2024. Hi guys, and here is the first book I have written, Life in a Ziploc Bag. Please check it out on Amazon or Flipkart. And it's also available for direct buying from the publisher itself. All these links are given in the description. Grab your copy now. Thank you.